back at it like we never left, boys and gals and folks listening in, lacrosse fans, sports bettors alike. It's time for another Bet on Lacrosse live edition where we're aiming not only to cash those tickets, betting the fastest game on 2 feet, we're also aiming each and every week to make you a better. I'm Dan Alexander, and we got a 4-man crew today. Excited. The boys back in town. Joined today by Justin Byers. He's with FOS. He's a business writer over there. We got Brian Andrews with Pro Lacrosse Talk, and we, of course, got Hutton Jackson from Action Network. It's another live edition here. Ride with us. You can request to be a speaker. We're going to get your thoughts as well by the end of the episode on some of your favorite plays. Do a little Q&A. And man, I'm battling losing my voice. I'm doing coaching this year. So as you can tell, I've just been screaming at these kids, whipping them into shape. I don't take no for an answer. And I never take no for an answer at the counter when I'm trying to cash some tickets, except when I bet on Penn State against the Maryland Terrapins. We don't have to talk about that. We can just gloss over the fact that my best bet last week was Penn State, and you could have given them, 9 goals, and they wouldn't have covered. You could have given them 10 goals, and they wouldn't have been able to cover. They got rolled up by the Maryland Terrapins. I tried to talk myself into it being, maybe a good spot, maybe a good opportunity for Penn State, Terps riding high. It turns out that team is just so damn good from top to bottom. We'll get into all that in a few moments here, recap a couple things, get some best bets, preview the biggest UNC Duke game that is happening on a Saturday. And no, it's not on hardwood. We're going to get to that in a little bit here. We got our NLL talk as well to wrap the program. But first, let's welcome in the boys. Start with our esteemed guest from FOS, the check mark next to the name. He gives legitimacy to all of it. We got JB, Justin Byers. Justin, always a pleasure, my man. How we doing?
No, it's a pleasure to join you folks tonight. I'm excited to talk some ball and to hopefully make some money this week.
Yeah, we'll make sure all of us do not bet on Penn State. That's going to be our first step to hopefully making money. They're facing off against OSU in the bounce back spot for Ohio State. Dear God, I'm clearly still reeling over it. Joining us again, it's been a while since we've had him live on the show with us, doing a great job with Pro Lacrosse Talk with some articles coming up. Great chatter on Twitter as well. We got Brian Andrews back in the house. Looking good, feeling good, sounding good. Brian, how we doing, man?
Great, man. It's good to be back on again. I've missed doing the show a lot, so I'm excited to talk about some recaps for some games who we're liking this week, and hopefully we can help people make some money.
And wrapping out the dais today, we got Hutton Jackson, Action Network, behind the scenes, writing articles as well, just busting his hump every which way. And this is almost like, yes, it's work, but we put it in air quotes because we love doing this and we appreciate everybody who's checking it out. Hutton, another night talking some lacrosse, man. How we doing?
I'm doing well. Had a good week last week, although probably my favorite play, Stony Brook versus Albany, was the one that crashed and burned the hardest. But other than that, I did pretty well. So aside from that, and then the UMBC play, hit a lot of bets last week, so happy about that. But sorry for the people that I drove home Stony Brook for because they just did not show up against Albany.
Yeah, and you didn't only have a decent week, Hutton. I won one pick head-to-head against you guys when I had Maryland over UVA, and I was strutting like a peacock. Before we get into the recap, Hutton, you were on fire last week. We're hoping that heater continues and that heater becomes transmissed across the entire dais here, and we can all start cashing some tickets. But what was the final record for you last week? Because you were on a heater, Hutton.
Yeah, I was 9-2 and a little over 4 units or whatever. So, yeah, I did really well last week. NLL was big. I feel like I've been getting a good read on the NLL, which has been very helpful. And I think I have a decent read on it this week as well. It's tough because these NLL games, it's, any given Saturday or Sunday, these teams can win. But, yeah, I definitely benefited from the NLL a little bit and, won some NCAA plays too. Tailed my boy Justin on that Hopkins money line, so credit to him for giving that one out last week. But yeah, can't complain.
Little plus money play added to the great weekend by Hutton. We're hoping that weekend continues. I'm also excited because not only Hutton having a good read on the NLL, happy to have Brian Andrews back. He does a terrific job looking at and picking spots and some sides and totals, especially for Brian in the NLL. We'll be talking about that at the end of the episode. So let's get into some college action. Little recap, I kind of alluded to it there, still licking the wounds from being a big, dumb bunny and rolling with Penn State. I don't know why. In hindsight, I don't know if it was, I have like one Penn State hoodie. I don't know if I was wearing it too much and like subliminally it got in my head, like brushing my teeth in the morning and I just saw the logo too much, but horrible pick by me sometimes. And that's the life of being a contrarian bettor. Like, when you are standing against the crowd, sometimes you're just going to be dead wrong and you just got to eat it and say, yeah, hopefully we get them next time. That one wasn't even close. Terps dominate 18-7. Another domination as well was Rutgers over OSU. That was maybe one that was even more surprising, a little bit tighter of a spread there. And Rutgers has kind of been a question mark team. You know, when they're hot, but when they're not, they're certainly not. And OSU, you could argue, has kind of exceeded expectations. They get rolled up on 18-7. Before we get to our plays for this week and preview this UNC Duke matchup, get some favorite best bets on the field before swiveling around and getting into the box side of things as playoffs are approaching. Either in any of those two games, the Terps Penn State game, I mean, what did we really learn there other than the Terrapins are really good? We probably should have known that. Probably should have listened to these guys a little bit more. But JB, you know, either the Rutgers game, Ohio State, stuff that maybe you took away from last weekend outside of us cashing that nice ticket on Hopkins.
Yeah, last weekend was pretty interesting, and I think it's starting to really show what these teams are made of as they step into conference play. And that was really, really evident in the Ohio State-Rutgers game. I'd actually looked at this game pretty hard Sunday morning, ended up taking Ohio State, thinking they'd have a pretty solid chance at getting a win because of their man-up percentage is the best in the nation, and also their face-off percentage is top 10 in the nation as well. So I'm thinking they're going to dominate possessions and take advantage of penalties, but that just didn't happen. Rutgers, between the lines, was just far more athletic, and they really play soundly as a team, and they were pretty impressive in that win over Ohio State, which we know with Nick Myers are going to be well coached, and I think they're solid, you know, on all three phases of Ohio State, but they just got outplayed and outworked and just out-hustled, and I think that's going to be a good indication of where this Big Ten is headed. I think what we've seen from Hopkins and from Michigan, I think Rutgers might be that top dog. And that's something I really took away from this weekend is we're seeing a lot of these conferences take shape. And so it'll be interesting into the second half of the season.
The one that just stays the anomaly is the Ivy. I mean, easily from top to bottom, the most competitive division across all of the teams. I kind of agree with you. Rutgers, that was a huge statement win because Ohio State's kind of exceeded expectations. I think if you're Rutgers, you're feeling pretty good about how you're sitting there in the Big Ten. I think a good point by you. Brian, any takeaways for you from what took place on the field, NCAA, any games? I know you said you tried to lay off a little bit more. You ended up with a full slate of bets thanks to the Twitter space on Bet On Lacrosse, but anything that stood out to you on the field before we start getting to some box a little bit later?
Yeah, don't get baited by high dog spreads because
good point.
Once the line for Penn State moved to 6.5, I bit and I shouldn't have. And it's funny that we're talking about Rutgers, Ohio State, because I was actually looking at that line as well, kind of enticed because I throughout the season so far I hadn't really gotten I haven't been paying enough attention to Rutgers, and the only time they really show up on my timeline is when they lose and people are yelling at Jules Henningsberg. But I was considering taking Ohio State and giving them the points. And then I just looked at like the season for Rutgers and I really decided not to. So one really bad play and one really good. I'm not going to take that bet this week for me. So that's my takeaway is sometimes you lose money and sometimes you walk away from a bad opportunity.
Hey, I'll tell you what, I said it, and I think you guys would all agree. We remind people a lot. Some of the best bets you're going to make are the ones you don't make, and I feel like I bat 100 when there's a play that I really like and I don't end up playing. It's always going to win. It's just the inevitable way of betting. But hey, it's better to have the unit size that you were going to be placing on a bet still in your pocket. Oh yeah, maybe it might have won. If it ends up losing, you would have lost that money as opposed to still having it as a part of your bankroll. So, selecting your plays, that can be one of our strongest tools as bettors. Hutton, other than basically tripping out of bed and cashing a bet, you were walked to the bathroom and, oh, here's another ticket cashed. What was some of the takeaways for you this last weekend in NCAA action?
Well, luckily I stayed off of, the Penn State thing as well, because I was kind of enticed Penn State plus 6.5 too. I was like, that's a big spread. But I was like, Maryland just looks too good. So I thankfully stayed away. But this Rutgers-Ohio State game, I think, was interesting to me. I didn't bet on this game, but I was leaning Ohio State plus 1.5. And so, again, I'm glad I didn't end up betting that. But I don't think Justin's read was actually that far off. I thought Ohio State was going to have an advantage at the face-off, and they didn't really. I thought, their man-up offense was going to be clicking. They didn't take a shot until their third man-up opportunity. So, sometimes your read on games can kind of be solid, but the team just doesn't execute. I felt that same way about Stony Brook against Albany. Stony Brook was supposed to have the advantage at the face-off stripe, and they got outworked by Albany. Sometimes it just depends, and, sometimes, even the numbers could be pointing in the right direction and it just doesn't go their way. So what I think is a takeaway from that is, if it doesn't go your way, we'll look for opportunities next week. And just a little teaser, I kind of like Ohio State in this spot. I feel like if they would have made it more competitive, I think we could have seen a maybe larger spread than 2.5. And I like, maybe backing them against this Penn State team who, you could make the case for them. They got beat pretty bad by Maryland, but I think overall Ohio State's a better team than Penn State is. So I think that's where you can kind of look at, okay, did Ohio State deserve to lose 18-7 to Rutgers? Probably not. So can I get an advantage, in this weekend's matchup? And that's kind of my takeaway, I guess, from watching games and kind of, even if a play doesn't go well, maybe use that to your advantage going into the next week.
Completely agree. I mean, that's why one of the things I like doing, and I kind of fell off this season just because there's so many games and so many teams to keep track of in the NCAA. Look at what the pregame spread is. I really like looking at what the market closed at, looking at what it opened at, and then using those to formulate an opinion. Have opinions on teams from what your eyes see, sure, and see how that differs from the market, because especially in a market like lacrosse, that can be one of your best tools as well. I think a great point that you make. Sure, maybe you end up losing a play, but just because you lost the play, don't say, oh, I'm never betting on this team again. Don't fall into those kind of betting not so great axioms where, I'm never betting on this team again. You got to look at the numbers more than these specific teams. I think a great point that Hutton brings up there. So let's get into some actionable info. Talking this week, and huge game. I mean, maybe the biggest game in either of these schools' histories. UNC taking on Duke in lacrosse. No, I know, Coach K's last game, all that's good and well. Screw that, man. I'm talking lacrosse action. Although if you're a fan of Duke or UNC, you're going to have an amazing Saturday. You get to watch the lacrosse, you get on ready for the basketball game. I'll say as far as the basketball games, I'm taking the points with UNC. I actually saw them live last week. That team is unreal. So there's a little added basketball play for you. Give me plus 4.5 UNC. But we're talking on the field. Duke is a 1.5 point favorite on the road against UNC. Now, I think we're all kind of looking at this game a little bit differently than each other, but two people who are looking the same way, and they're both looking towards, shocker, Hutton and Brian are talking totals. Brian, I'll give you first crack at this one, and then we'll get Hutton's thought on this total. Seems a bit high. 27.5 is what it's sitting at right now. I know there's firepower. There's Chris Gray. There's O'Connell. That's a high number, Bri.
Yeah, it is a high number, and particularly for two teams that have seen really high highs this season and really low lows. So I'm like, by leaning for the under as opposed to money line or the spread, these two teams have just behaved so erratically. There's a lack of consistency from week to week at times, often for stretches of time. Even though we're getting closer to, conference play when teams have to tighten up, I just feel like these teams have still yet to totally find their identity on the field. And that makes me just not really want to lean one way or the other, because it's going to come down to who shows up. And when that's the only thing that's going to dictate basically either the spread or the money line, because the teams are so kind of evenly talented. I look at the total, I see it's high. If one of the teams doesn't show up, which seems likely for either one of these teams, especially UNC, who has been having a rocky time on offense with a lot of unforced turnovers throughout the season, I see it more likely going under than over, but I don't want to pick a winner at all.
Yeah, that's something, and I've watched this UNC team a lot. I love watching ACC play, and that's the one constant thread through the season. You have a goalie who's been up and down when he's seeing it. It's awesome. When he's not, that young defensive unit really leaves a lot to be desired. They just haven't quite found that chemistry. Their spots on the field. The one common thread through the season has been passes going over people's heads, skip passes getting forced and slapped down. There just isn't much of an offensive flow to UNC, sure, but you could say the same about Duke. A lot of, not really assisted goals, a lot of ball handlers trying to dodge their hands open. So both of these teams that typically is a high-powered, really succinct offense, neither of them have really been that. I think Brian making a good case for the under there. Hutton, you have anything to even bolster that play, looking towards that under 27.5?
Yeah, I like the under as well. And not just because, it is the highest total of the week, but these teams haven't gone over that total too often. And when they have, it's kind of been in blowout wins. Duke, they've only done it 4 times this season so far. They beat High Point by 4 goals in that one. They beat Delaware by 5. And then they ended up beating Robert Morris and Denver as well. So Denver's the one where, that's a competitive game, but the other ones were kind of out of hand and they just kind of poured it on. And UNC, they've had even less. 2 games have gone over that 27.5 mark for them. And that was a loss to Ohio State where they just got the doors blown out by them, and a 17-16 thriller against Denver. So, going off of that kind of leads me to believe that we're in for another under. And I just feel like in these rivalry games, you really see the defenses step up, especially ACC play. I kind of echo what Brian and you guys are saying. I don't think these offenses are completely in sync. And even if they do start figuring it out against each other, come Saturday, I just don't see this total going over 27.5.
Yeah, I think, again, some great points you're making there. Now, I think you guys might be talking me into this under. It's so atypical to be talking ACC action and really trying to find how these two teams are going to get to 28 points. I mean, this is just a completely different conference this year. And I think just as a whole, look at what's happened in the Notre Dame. It's just this conference as a whole is really just kind of under exceeding those expectations. And it's kind of surprising to see, because this is always the marquee matchups, right, Hutton?
No, yeah, for sure. And, to add a little bit of numbers too, these teams aren't really fast in pace. Duke's 51st, out of, I think, 73 teams, and UNC is 45th. So even though we think of these teams as, having high-powered weapons, they still like to slow it down. Defenses are both solid. You got Adler and Cage for Duke, doing pretty well. And then on the flip side, Krieg as well, for UNC. They're both been playing decent. So I don't know. I feel like if anyone's going to have a big game, it's going to be one of those goaltenders. I just don't think this game script is going to play. I don't think these teams are going to want to get into a run and gun. I think they're going to want to dominate possession, because that's what they like to do, slow it down and be methodical with putting goals in the back of the net.
Yeah, and JP, you're going to get the final word on this one. As I look at this game, and I've just seen so much of UNC this year, I don't know if they've figured it out. So I don't have anything that I'm probably placing in this game. If I had to be forced to pick a play, I would probably go Duke money line. I wouldn't want to be laying 1.5 with them, because in the contested games they've had, it's not like against top flight competition that they've been able to cover any number, against Richmond. You could argue, since Richmond is top 20, that's one of their best wins. Delaware, one of their best wins. Again, I think that UNC is probably a different level than even those two teams, even at the level that they're playing at in the subpar level. So I would lean Duke, but if I had a crystal ball and you could tell me that Krieg was going to be balling out in this game, I would flip my pick to the other side. I would take the 1.5. So I think while you and I might be attacking this game a little bit different, I don't think there's enough to make me want to bet on either of these teams. Is there anything in this game that you actually would take money out of your pocket and place on, JB?
Yeah, I was high on this UNC team coming into this season. They're one of two teams I had a future on, which is actually funny because I have a future on Duke as well. So I think this game is important not only to these teams, but the ACC conference as a whole. And I'm going with North Carolina plus 1.5. And I'm taking the sharp bettor approach, kind of fading the public, because we know a lot of money will probably end up getting on Duke as we get closer to the weekend. But I feel comfortable taking the dog against a Duke team that just has left a lot to be desired. Like, I just don't know what we're getting week to week with the Blue Devils. And I think Chris Gray, from what I've seen the past two games, he's kind of getting back into old form, kind of building on your point, Dan, about them turning the ball over, kind of forcing things. They weren't really playing succinctly, but I think they're kind of getting there. And I also made a promise to myself to never bet against Colin Krieg again. Every time I do, me being a former goalie, I have tremendous pride in what he does and what all these guys do. And he always plays lights out when I bet against him. So I made a promise I'll never do that again.
Sometimes it is that simple. And for what it's worth, UNC is a home dog this week. UNC has 7 wins on the year. 6 of them came at home. So, a live dog. Also, if Duke doesn't lose last week outright to Syracuse, and it didn't even seem as close as that final score was, Duke's still a 1.5 point favorite, even coming off a loss. So if they win that game, do we see 2.5 here? What's the number? I like playing that revisionist history. If Duke wins that game, you might be even getting a better number. So, I think a much stronger handicap that you have, Justin, on this game than, me kind of looking towards leaning Duke. I think that there's enough to be excited about North Carolina getting 1.5 in a competitive game that, if you were going to play a side, that might be the better way to look than, just leaning Duke and saying, oh, here comes the bounce back. Because we've been kind of waiting for that Duke bounce back all year, right, Justin?
Literally every week, you think they're going to at least explode or kind of take over and show us what we know they're capable of. We see this roster; it's flooded with talent, top to bottom, in every position. So there's no reason they shouldn't be playing well. And of course, they have arguably the best college lacrosse coach in all time, in Donowski. So something's got to give with this Duke team, right? They have too much seniority as well. It's surprising they're playing this way. But that's just the nature of the game and nature of the business of college lacrosse right now. Everyone's pretty good and everyone's pretty solid and competing. And I think Duke's kind of suffering because of that.
He's Justin Byers. I'm Dan Alexander, Hutton Jackson, and Brian Andrews. On the call here, it's another Bet on Lacrosse Twitter space. You want to be a part of the conversation, you can drop us a little request. We'll add you to speakers. We're going to hit our best bets, and then we're going to hear from one of those listeners. We're going to be talking with my guy, Tyler. We were actually supposed to face off, guys, in a lacrosse game. Ended up getting canceled because of weather. It's been rescheduled. Tyler and I will see each other on the field. He with Central Dauphin, me with the Governor Mifflin Mustangs. We're both looking forward to that. We're going to hear from Tyler in just a few moments, but it's actionable info time. Best bets here on the Bet on Lacrosse podcast for NCAA action this weekend. We haven't heard from him in a little bit, so we're going to throw it Brian Andrews' way. What are you looking at NCAA action this weekend? Brian Andrews with Pro Lacrosse Talk.
I'm going off the beaten path a little bit, and I'm going to talk about Vermont and UMBC. And shocker, I'm going to talk about a total because the total for this game is 20.5, which is really abnormally low. We see 20.5 a decent amount in the NLL, but in college, usually the low end of the totals are hanging around like 22.5, 23.5. So this one is particularly low. When you look at these teams' schedules and games, each team has like only a couple games where the total hasn't reached that threshold. And we know Vermont's a very talented team. UMBC has some pretty high-quality wins. We know that they can compete with teams. But I like this total in particular for a couple of reasons that don't really depend on the quality of the teams. And it's because we know each of these teams can put up, 11 goals. So you can have an 11-10 finish and it still be the over still hits. But you can also have a blowout of a game and it still hits. There's been plenty of 16-6s this season and stuff like that. So if one team really just folds, if UMBC folds and Vermont runs them over, if UMBC hits 5 goals, Vermont can get to that 15. They've shown that they can do that, and the over can hit. So it's kind of a square pick. You have to lay a little bit of juice at -125, but there's little dependence on how the game has to go for that total to be reached, unless both teams' offenses just kind of all collapse somehow. So I feel like it's a very safe play, kind of maybe a square play, but I don't know when we're going to see another 20.5 total in NCAA. So I feel like I should take it while it's available.
Agreed. I mean, we talk all the time about playing numbers, not teams. That's a great one right there. You just look at this Vermont team. They're past, past 4 games other than the Dartmouth game. They've been scoring points. They just scored 15, 14 the game before that, 10 in a loss, 16 in a win, 11 in a loss, 16 in a win against Penn State, 10 in a loss. The last time they scored under double-digit goals was against the number 3 team in the nation currently, or at that point, that was Duke in a 15-7 loss. So this Vermont team is holding up their end of the bargain. If UMBC can do the same, I definitely probably going to be sprinkling a little bit, riding on that with the total master himself, Brian Andrews, looking at over 20.5 in the Vermont UMBC game. I like it, Brian. So Hutton, we're going to throw it your way because I think you got a 2-pack. As I'm looking at our notes here, I feel like just plays just keep getting splattered onto the board. We're just going to wreck the bookies this weekend. NCAA actionable info, Hutton Jackson of Action Network. What are your best bets of the weekend?
Yeah, so I'll start off with one of my best bets, and that is I like Ohio State laying -2.5. Right now the juice is -130, so not ideal there, but I'm still willing to lay that. I just think, if we had seen Ohio State make that last game respectable against Rutgers, we could have probably been looking at a 3.5, maybe. I don't want to say 4.5, but probably a 3.5 here. So I think we're getting a goal. I don't think Penn State's that good. Penn State showed that they can, pull out some wins like against Yale and stuff, but I just don't see them bouncing back. And I like laying the 2.5 with Ohio State. Now, if it does eventually move to 3.5, there I think I would stay away. But get the -2.5 while you still can for the Buckeyes. That's a Friday game. But that's my best bet. And then I have an extra money opportunity as well, which one that I think you'll like, Dan. I really like Utah -1.5 +115 against Air Force. I think this Utah team is overall better. They flirted with being in the top 20, and I think they've had some more quality wins. Air Force isn't a bad team, but if you look at some common opponents, I mean, Utah just whooped up on Mercer. Now they were at home, but 23-9, where Air Force, they beat them 13-10. Now, again, Air Force had to travel down to Georgia to play Mercer, but I just think Utah is an overall better team. I think they can cover this -1.5, but if you're not juice adverse, you don't necessarily want the plus money play, you could also get them on the money line at -130 as well. And I think that's a safer bet if you feel like Utah is going to win. It just might be close and you don't want to lay the 1.5, take Utah on the money line -130. But I like them laying the 1.5 at +115 for an extra money opportunity.
Ooh, the EMOs coming back. If only I could hook my soundboard into here, get some music bumping in this Twitter space. I don't know. Maybe the next Twitter update, or maybe if we upgraded all our accounts to like that Twitter Blue thing and charged people, we could pump some sound into here. But we would never do that to you. Free information right here on Bet On Lacrosse. I thought we agreed, guys. We weren't going to even mention the name Penn State. So we could have just talked about Ohio State there. No, I'm just messing with you, Hutton. Hutton looking towards OSU. And you don't have to talk me too much into backing the Utes. Been a team I loved in the underdog role, but I think them actually laying this week, even going on the road, I think that might be a spot worth looking towards as well. And at a nice plus 115 price, a decent take back if the Utes can get the 2-goal win. Also with a little 2-pack here for you is Justin Byers, a business writer with Front Office Sports. JB, what do you got for the folks, man?
Yeah, we're doubling up again last week. We had some success last week with Hawkins and UMass, so we're kind of going with the same approach this week. And I see a similar line here with Navy plus 3.5, which seeing it is really surprising considering the shipmen are 6-3, and they've played some pretty good ball. They've had a strong road win over Johns Hopkins last week, which gives me faith in them on the road once again in Boston. And I'm looking at BU's schedule, and they only have one real significant win, and that's over UMass. Other than that, BU's kind of left me with a little bit more, like wanting to kind of see what they've got, and they just haven't really shown me much. But I know this Navy team is talented. They're coached up well by Joe Amplo. I think they even get a win. Like it's surprising to see them as an underdog in this situation, especially with the history this program has. But getting it at plus 3.5, I think that's a perfect spot. I'd even kind of take a gamble on the money line at plus 270. It's worth a try. I had some success doing the same last week with UMass's outright win, so I wouldn't be surprised if Navy pulls this one out. And the second pick I've got is Penn. We're taking a dive back in the Ivy League, which has been very profitable for me this season so far, mostly because all the teams are even, so there's a ton of value. And I know Yale is coming off a huge win over Princeton, which Princeton's proven to be probably the best team in the Ivy League. But because it is so competitive, I don't see Yale winning back-to-back weeks in the conference against two good teams. That's why I'm pulling for Penn here on the money line at minus 125. I think it's just a good, safe, sound pick. I've seen Penn's schedule and the quality wins they have, and the losses they've had are two of the best teams in the country. So if they're going to be going into this with a chip on their shoulder, I think they pull this one out. I know Yale has their history. They've gotten a recent national championship. They've got a great coach. They've always got great goaltending. But I think Penn is just the more athletic team, and I think they're going to get it done. So I'm rolling with Penn money line and Navy plus 3.5.
Love it. Good breakdown there. Another little 2-pack for you from Justin Byers. For me, we were talking before the show in our pre-show meeting, and I just think this is a tough week. I think, we did a good job scouring right there, finding some good plays. But as far as, laying juice or, laying points, I think it's a tough board this week. I just wasn't in love with it. And one of my favorite things to do when I don't love the board is, if I don't love one play, why not try and find 3 plays that are going to hit? I love doing the little 3-team parlay, getting the best true odds that you can get when betting parlays. So I threw together a little 3-teamer, and the teams I'm looking at, Cuse is flying high after a win over Duke, where you look at the Irish, Notre Dame just needs to right the ship in the worst way. So give me Notre Dame over Cuse. I think Notre Dame get the win outright. They're laying 2.5. I'm going to stay away from that and just try and get them to win the game. Another team who I think could go on the road and get a big win is Georgetown, but laying 3.5, that doesn't work for me as they're going to altitude, taking on Denver. A bit sketchy. So instead of laying and having them win by 4, how about we just get them to win by 1 over a Denver team that's kind of been up, kind of been down. Georgetown is at a little bit more of a steady hand. I'm going to take Georgetown over Denver. And the one that really probably doesn't even need explanation, I'm taking Maryland. I'm taking Maryland over Michigan. I don't think I have to break that one down too much. I faded Maryland to no avail last week. I'm not going to do it again. They are an over 1,100 money line favorite. So the odds maker saying, sure, you can bet this if you want to. They're probably going to win the game. I think all 3 of these teams get home. So give me Notre Dame money line over Cuse. Give me Georgetown money line over Denver. And give me Maryland money line over Michigan. Splice all those together, and it is a decent 105 that you have to lay on DraftKings. Just $10.50, for you to get a $10 take back. I don't think that's too shabby with 3 teams I think can get the outright win, and I'm staying away from the juice there. So I'm going with the 3-teamer parlay. We're actually going to be hearing from one of our listeners here in just a few moments, get his thoughts on the NCAA slate. Our guy Tyler joining the show once again. But some other plays we got for you. Justin taking on Navy plus 3.5. You got to lay 130 for that, but a solid play as well. Taking Penn on the money line, minus 125. Brian Andrews going over 20.5. We're eating this week. Vermont UMBC over 20.5, minus 125 on that one. And Hutton with a 2-pack as well, with an EMO going Utah minus 1.5, plus 115. And he's also fading Penn State. Wish I would have been a week earlier on fading Penn State, but we're taking Ohio State minus 2.5. That's Hutton's best bet. Let's welcome in one of our loyal listeners and loyal joiners of the show as well. We got Tyler hopping in with his thoughts on this week's NCAA slate. What are you thinking? You eyeing anything in that Duke game, Tyler? You got a favorite play elsewhere in NCAA action? Welcome to the show. Thanks for listening. Great to talk to you, man.
What's going on, fellas? Glad to be back. Who would have thought that when I started listening and joining that, we would all just have so much in common between Hutton going to DeSales and you coaching a gov. I don't know, and you coach the Governor Mifflin. That's crazy. But
small world, man. We love the lacrosse
small
community, and the more that you get to know people, you're like, wait, you know who? Wait, you know what? So yeah, come into a field near you. It's gonna be me and Tyler, the JV squad, squaring off. I'm gonna make Tyler, hate to say it if any of my GM boys are listening, but I'm making you guys minus 3.5, man. We've had a rough start to the year on the JV side of things when we face off. But what's up, Tyler?
What's going on? Yeah, so we'll see what happens. And it's the showdown of the century. I mean, talking about showdowns, North Carolina, Duke. Not really feeling anything, man. It's a scary game for me, but I do have a little bit of a short list going. So I definitely do like that Ohio State minus 2.5 after Penn. As much as I like Penn State, I got friend of mine, Mark Sickler, midfielder for them, very very good. Sorry, Mark. I do like Ohio State minus 2.5. I'm kind of like, I think that Virginia might just roll Richmond. There's a high chance there. I like Virginia minus 4.5. Might look at Army minus 2.5 against Bucknell, but like in the history of their games, they played each other very tight. I like Hobart. I mean, I thought I had a read on Hobart last week when they were minus on the spread, but now they're plus 2.5 against St. Joe's. And as I'm looking here, 8 of the last 9 games of these two teams are 1-goal games, with like 5 of them being in overtime. So I'm definitely liking Hobart plus the points. And Hutton, I'm sorry that we couldn't come through on Stony Brook minus 2.5. I feel like we were right. Stony Brook was wrong. They just didn't do what we said was going to happen. It's fine. We'll move on. We had the right read. They just didn't follow through. So it's their fault, not ours.
I think Albany just, wanted it more of that game. Again, goes back to like you said, I feel decent read, just not the execution that we expected.
And then the last one is kind of weird, but UMass Delaware, the under, because looking at their history, like a lot of that total, that 25 points, 24.5. When they play each other close, I feel like it will be a close game. They tend to go low, 9-6, 9-11, 8-9, 6-9, 9-7, the past couple scores. So I'm liking that under potentially. And I don't like unders often because, as we know, life's too short. But I am potentially liking the under in that game. We'll see. Obviously, that's my short list for the week, but we'll see what makes the blog at the end. I wish I would have included Army last week, so I might have to put them on this week just to redeem myself. But yeah, that's all I got. I'm glad to be back as always.
Awesome, man. And where can people find that blog? Just stay tuned to your Twitter timeline there, and that's they can check it out.
Yeah, you can follow us at Pickin' Winners on it. So it's not just lacrosse. I am one of a team. The guys who started off doing UFC picks, and they have a show on YouTube. I plan to get a thing going on YouTube very shortly, but it's at Pickin' Winners on Twitter and Instagram. I'm sure if you went on my timeline, you would find tweets from us. But we do daily basketball picks and all sorts of stuff. So I'm just kind of bringing my lacrosse flavor to the betting world and trying to get it to a broader audience. But yeah, at Pickin' Winners. Also Pickin' Winners on YouTube. And pickandwinners.org. We got it everywhere, man.
Awesome stuff, man. Well, appreciate you hopping in, Tyler. Best of luck this weekend, and best of luck to the Rams as well moving forward, you and the Central Dauphin Rams. Appreciate you hopping in here, man. Want to remind anybody else listening in, if you want to be a part of the show, we're going to be opening it up after a little NLL talk for a little Q&A, and you can drop some of your favorite plays as well. You just hit that request speaker button, and we'll get you right in here. That's what it's all about. We met some folks going to be coaching against folks that we met here. We found out that, people got their phone tossed by professional athletes that have been on our Twitter space. So we've really had a bevy of different guests join in here to the Bet on Lacrosse Twitter space. It's time for a little NLL talk, and man, huge ups to our guys who have really been digging in. And, betting the NLL has been tough this year. That's why JB and I have kind of leaned back a little bit and, taken a little bit more of a backseat. Still enjoy the game, still enjoy watching it, but I just had been really hemorrhaging and not, really being able to find spots. But Hutton, Brian, sticking the oars in the water and keeping the boat moving forward. Our pro lacrosse bets, a perfect 3-0 again. Love saying it. Love it when you have a clean sweep. Bandits, Thunderbirds, first game over the 20.5. Swarm getting the 1.5 versus Rock, and the Roughnecks getting the 1.5 versus Rush. So 3-0 sweep for us. That's why I love riding with my guys here. Got a little bit of extra money in my pocket to help me lament some of my losses in the NCAA side of things. But Hutton, what were you seeing as you were watching some NLL last weekend? Obviously in the box itself, but obviously from the betting aspect that we look at it here on the Bet on Lacrosse show.
Well, first off, shout out to Panther City. Again, I didn't have the confidence in them this week, but they once again cover the spread and get the outright win. They're 5-0 the past 5 games. If you had bet $100 on each Panther City game on the money line, you'd be up $745 right now. So whatever they're doing down in Panther City, down in Fort Worth, Texas, Coach Koleski's got them really ready to play, and they're now in a position to, make the playoffs potentially. Still on the outside looking in, but it's very interesting. They opened the season at 15,000 to win. So I still don't think they're going to win. I still don't think they're going to make the playoffs, but credit to them for really, righting the ship. They looked like the worst team in the NLL, 5 weeks ago, and they've really turned it around. They're continuing to roll. The Swarm as well are a team that I'm going to talk about a little bit more. They've also been playing well. They got the outright win against Toronto. They're 3-0 in the past 3 weeks, 3-0 against the spread and straight up. So if you bet $100 on them the past 3 games, you'd be up $435. So again, this is not me saying go put some money on Panther City, go put some money on Georgia. Just those are some teams that are doing really well despite the market kind of going against them. So overall though, it's been a very muddy postseason push here for a lot of teams. The Swarm are right now in the 4th spot in the East. And we're going to get to some picks for this week, but I honestly think at plus 3,000, they're worth a futures bet. They're in a playoff spot right now, being the 4th team in the East. Even if they drop out of that spot into the wild card, they still actually might have a good shot. And the reason why is whoever ends up getting this wild card, whether it be the Wings, Firewolves, Swarm, you also have the Roughnecks and Panther City trying to fight for that spot. They would actually play in the west side of the bracket. And so far this season, the East is 7-3 against the West. The East has just been the stronger division, stronger competition there. So if this team that gets the wild card is able to get past the Seals, they're going to have an easier road than having to go through the gauntlet of the East. So that's why I already have a future on the Firewolves. They were plus 2,500 when I bet them. They're now down to plus 1,600, despite being outside on the outside looking in currently. And the Swarm being in that 4th spot, essentially that 7th spot, playoff spot of 8, they're plus 3,000. I think if I'm a bettor that wants to place a future, they're the ones I would go at. You could also look at the Wings plus 2,000. They're in the wild card spot right now. These 3 teams are playing each other. So if you have one of them, I think I would wait a little bit on the Wings just because you want to make sure that they are going to make the playoffs before you place a future. But right now, the way the Swarm have been playing, the fact that they're in that 7th spot, it's tough for them right now to miss the playoffs barring a big derail from their season. So that's why at those long shot odds and the fact that they're already in a comfortable spot, I think they're worth playing in the future. I don't know. Do you have similar thoughts, Brian? What are your kind of thoughts on this playoff picture that's kind of taking shape?
Yeah, I think it's even tightening up on the Western Division front where teams are starting to catch up to the Warriors. So I think anyone really on the bubble placing a future on them is kind of really risky right now. So I agree with your perspective about waiting it out, particularly because like the Swarm still has to go through like an East Coast gauntlet to maintain their spot. So even if they beat the Rock again this weekend, they still have to play a really tough majority East Coast schedule to maintain that spot. So really got to wait to see a little bit more from the Swarm because they are on kind of a Cinderella run right now where they're beating a lot of teams that they weren't expected to, a lot of upsets, but they're like really fragile upsets. They're 1-goal wins frequently. They've only held one team below 10 goals, and it was the Thunderbirds. So like they're squeaking away with a lot of wins, but I think I need to wait to see until they give me some convincing wins, such that they would be able to make it through a really grueling playoff schedule.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I just think their value, even if they get a loss, I don't think their odds are gonna get longer, but I think they could get shorter. On the flip side, what are your kind of thoughts on maybe one of these favorites? Right now, I don't think there's really any value in the Bandits. They were, plus 900 to start the season. Now they're plus 150, which is like ridiculously close odds. Obviously they're the only team to clinch a playoff spot, so it's warranted, but I don't think I would take a flyer on them at that number. But what about, maybe the Seals, Thunderbirds, or Rock, teams that are 1 or 2 games away from getting into the playoffs? Do you think any of their odds are worth putting a future on, or is it more just wait and see, or would you rather, maybe take that money and, just bet them through the playoffs?
I'm personally going to hold off and take that money to the playoffs. I think the Thunderbirds have shown that they can beat basically everybody. And the only team above them and who just beat them twice in a row is the Bandits. I just think that there's like 3 levels right now, and it's the Bandits and then the Thunderbirds and then kind of not everybody else. But the Thunderbirds and the Bandits are some of the teams that have shown that they can beat the person right immediately below them in the standings, the most even of the matchups, twice in a row. And so I have trouble betting against the Bandits to beat any of the teams right now in a 3-game series. So I don't see a lot of value even in a second place or a third place team future right now.
No, fair enough. That's why I wanted to get your opinion, because I don't really see any value either. I think, maybe the Toronto Rock, but, they just lost to the Swarm. Just no team has been that dominant compared to the Bandits. Even the Seals, being in the West, I just kind of laid out that I think, if they face the Firewolves already beat them. It doesn't mean they're going to lose to them again, but they could also lose to the Swarm. The Wings, I think, is going to be a tough game. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about any other futures other than the Swarm. But I just wanted to get your perspective because, now's kind of the time to start looking at that if you do want to place a future, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to, pull the trigger.
Yeah, and I think too that when it gets this late in the year, any true value that you're really going to get as you really want with a futures ticket is probably going to be dried up, because Hutton said it perfectly. Would you want to get on the Bandits now? Sure. You wanted to get on the Bandits a couple weeks ago. You were still only getting around like plus 400 versus those nice plus 900 odds that you were getting. So I think that I'm kind of with Brian as far as take your money, keep it in your pocket. And if you like a team in the playoffs, let's roll it over, take them in the first round. They win, roll it on over to the next round. They win again, roll it on over. And then you're basically mechanically parlaying that and you're constantly gaining value on it. And if you lose, guess what? You're still losing that same amount that you were going to invest in a plus whatever you were getting future, and you may end up with actually more money in your bankroll. Sure, you may have to lay some juice to get there, but you're going to end up with a better plus 150 payout. You can get that on one game if the Bandits end up going down. They're in a hole, and they still end up winning. I just think there's better ways value-wise to attack than place a future at now, though. I think in that same breath, Hutton did make some good cases for some of these teams that you can still get some of those longer odds. I think the NLL is still wide open, though there definitely is those tiers of those teams that you guys were kind of breaking down there. So I think great points all around. Just me as a bettor, unless it's mid-season to early season, I tend to shy away from futures. I know some people play it different, but that's just always been the way that I've kind of, I've kind of attacked it personally, Hutton.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And that's why, I really, even the three teams I mentioned fighting for that wild card spot, I think the Wings could easily fall out, and the Firewolves, even though I already have a future on them, they're not in a playoff spot right now. I just think the Swarm, again, they got a gauntlet, and maybe it doesn't look so good in the next couple of weeks. But right now, they're the one team that I don't think their value in the futures market is being reflected in where they are currently in a playoff position. But again, I agree with you guys too. With some of these favorites, it's like it's just not worth it. Because you could put a favorite, future on the Seals at plus 425, not bad, but they could lose in the first round. Any of these teams could, and you're really not getting that much value where they're at right now.
They're not going to gain much standing. They're not going to lose much standing. You're kind of placing a dead ticket at that point. I think you're kind of taking the words out of my mouth on that aspect. Let's get into a little actionable info here for the NLL coming up this weekend. We got some favorite plays for you. For me, I'm going to hand the mic over. You just heard these guys waxing poetic. JB and I, we got you on the field, but when it comes to the box, I'm deferring to my guys, Brian and Hutton. I've just been formulaically, I only have to lay -1.5 with the Chaos. I mean the Bandits. Yeah, I'm going to do that. That's kind of been my joke that's been running through the entire season, and it's not only been a good punchline, it's been a profitable endeavor. Both games with the Bandits this weekend, now 2.5. I don't know if I have it in my heart to lay 2.5 against my Philadelphia Wings. So I'm probably staying away, but I think some good cases to be made. So Brian, I'm going to throw it right back your way. This is a play that both you and Hutton are kind of leaning towards. You're kind of lining up on a couple different plays this weekend. As far as the totals go, we know you got to start with a total when we got Brian Andrews on here. What are you looking at as we're looking at some NLL actionable info?
I agree with you, first of all, about being hesitant to put 2.5 against the Wings, especially with how good revamped their offense looked against Rochester. But this will be the true test of the trades that the Wings made to make their offense playoff ready. This will be the test. So I'm saying I want to stay away from that game because I want to see what the Wings can do. Because I think their left side is greatly improved. We saw Corey Small and Jackson team up really well together, and Corey Small had a crazy game. So I want to see how that goes against a defense like the Bandits, who have one of the two best defenses in the league, before I really continue to judge the ability of the Wings to make a push for the playoffs. But most teams are playing twice this weekend, and the Wings are no exception, and they play the Riptide second this weekend. And I love, every time that these teams play, I love the over. It's 21.5 right now at -125. But the Riptide have only let up less than 12 goals in one game, and it was last week against the Firewolves. And it was really, the Firewolves kind of imploded in that game. Very abnormal for them. I don't know. I can't say just because of 1 week the Riptide's defense has pulled it together. So I really expect the Wings, especially with their new additions, to be able to score against this Riptide defense. And the Riptide, even though they let up a lot of goals, they can stay in games. They've lost 18, 17 games against some of the top teams in the league. They just can't pull out those wins generally. So I expect this to kind of be like a really high-flying, lot of transition game with a high total. And I think 21.5 is like criminally low for those two teams.
So, Hutton, you're kind of looking towards this over as well. So anything to add to that? Agree? And maybe what's some other plays that you're looking at in NLL action this weekend?
Yeah, no, I agree with Brian. I like that over 21.5 too. So I'm tailing him. Like he said, I think this Wings offense, felt good last week. I think they're going to, playing a similar team in the Riptide in this second game. I think too while the second games tend to of teams tend to go under, that's more when they're in consecutive matchups. These teams have higher powered offenses. Obviously, the Riptide, you look to the other side, Callum Crawford and Jeff Teat, a lot of firepower, even losing Tyson Gibson. So I like that play a lot as well. Another one that I think me and Brian are in agreements is Warriors on the money line against the Roughnecks. They're underdogs in this game, and although the Warriors, were coming off a 4-game losing streak before getting a win last week, I don't think they deserve to be underdogs, against Calgary. Despite Calgary, again, is also playing well, and Calgary's at home. I just think, this line is backwards, and I like the Warriors on the money line plus 105. If you like them at plus 1.5, you could get that at minus 160, but that's a lot of juice to lay. I think you're better off, just trying to get them straight up. I don't know. You got anything to add on that one, Brian?
I agree with you that line's completely backwards, especially after the Warriors just took down the Seals without Mitch Jones. Last week we were really on Calgary's side because they were getting 1.5 against the Rush. So for whatever reason, the books are really backwards. They're favoring the team below in the standings, and I think that the Warriors they beat the Roughnecks in their last matchup 11-10. But I think the Warriors have shown a little bit of improvement. I've been saying all season, I need them to show me that they can upset somebody before I believe that they're going to secure their spot in the 3 seed of the West. And now that they have, I have a little bit more faith in them that I think that they can hold off their spot from the Roughnecks. And on top of that, they need to win this game to maintain, or at least they need to have a good weekend. And this game, if the Roughnecks beat them, the likelihood of them losing that 3rd spot is really high. If not this weekend, then by next weekend. So I think underdogs plus 105 on the money line in a game where they have to win to really solidify and maintain their spot in a clinch playoff position. I like that play a lot.
Yeah, no, I agree. And again, I think Calgary is playing really well too. So I don't want to disservice them because I don't think they're a bad team. I think they're playing really well. But seeing these teams match up, I just think the Warriors are a better team, and it's almost comes down to the fact that they're underdogs in this game makes them more enticing. So I don't know. And it sucks because again, safe play, take them plus 1.5. It's minus 160. So that's just a lot of juice to lay on BetMGM or DraftKings either way. But yeah, I agree with you on that play. Another one that I do like as well. Just because, I like the Warriors in their first game, but they have 2 games this weekend. They return home, and they're taking on the Firewolves. I kind of like the Firewolves in this game. I think the Firewolves have their backs against the wall. I think they're a better team than their record kind of indicates. Again, I like a lot of these East teams against the West teams. I just think the East is stronger this year. So I kind of like the Firewolves on the money line at minus 140. If you like laying points with them, you can get them at minus 1.5 at plus 120. So you can get some plus money. I just think, though, this Firewolves team, despite pulling off some upsets, they're favored in this game. I don't really know if I trust them to necessarily cover that. I just don't want to get into a 1-goal game where they end up winning but not covering the spread. So that's why I like, laying a little bit more juice to back the Firewolves on the money line. It's not my favorite play, but it's another play that I'm definitely going to put down maybe a half unit on.
How about that? That's why you stick around, because you get a 3-pack, 2 out of the 3 packs, double best bets. There's the chance if you want to hop in, give some of your favorite plays, maybe drop a question for the dais here. You can hit request to be a speaker. If we don't have a chance to get you in on this episode, just shoot us a DM. We'll be sure to get you in next week. Do a little recap before that. Remind people that the NLL plays for this weekend. Wings and Riptide over 21.5. Warriors money line at a plus 105 price. Also looking at the Firewolves on the money line is Hutton from Action Network. On the field, what we were looking at, a whole slew of plays. We're looking at Ohio State minus 2.5 and Utah -1.5 at a nice +115 price. Those are Hutton's best bets for this week. Brian going with a shocker, a total, and we're going over in the Vermont UMBC game, over 20.5. A 2-pack from our guy, Justin Byers from Front Office Sports, a business writer there. Check him out. Great follow on Twitter. Maybe even a better writer when you check out some of these articles he's dropping. And the news that he's breaking, he drops a little 2-pack for you. Navy getting the 3.5 points, -130 on that one. And Penn money line, -125 play. I went with a 3-pack of a parlay. I'm not a great parlay guy. I never really advocate it, but when you don't like the board, why not spray it with a machine gun? I'm taking Notre Dame against Cuse on the money line, Georgetown money line against Denver on the road, and give me, it's going to be a tough one to get home, Maryland over Michigan, -105. That's the parlay on DraftKings. That's my best bet for the week. So those are all of our best bets. And now let's hear from one of our guys, one of our frequent listeners and frequent joiners here of the live edition of Bet On Lacrosse. Billy, what's up, my man? How we doing?
Good. Thanks for having me on again. Always great to join you guys. I wanted to start out. I definitely like Hutton's Ohio State play. I think they have a much stronger resume and should be able to cover. Also like Justin's UNC play. I'm actually leaning towards Duke's team this year, saying they might possibly be a little fraudulent. And despite UNC's struggles, I think they're real solid. So I'll take the dog with the points in that one with Justin. Also, though, like Dan said, it's a tough weekend, tough card this weekend. I don't have a lot of firm bets yet. I've been leaning towards Denver +3.5 against Georgetown. Denver is just a really good team, and I think that's a lot of points to give a very good team, but Georgetown's also good enough that they're kind of scaring me, so I'll have to look into that one more. And then my firm bet for this weekend is actually going against Justin. Is taking Yale +1.5. I think that Penn is
Head action there, JB.
Yeah, I hate to go against Justin, but I think they're two pretty evenly matched teams. Although Penn does have really good athletes, like Justin was saying. If you go on lacrosse reference, Penn is 7th in strength of record, and Yale's 9th, right behind them. Also, I like the underdog in these tight Ivy games that tend to be close. And 4 of Penn's 6 games this year have been 1-goal games. So I'm hoping to keep riding with this trend that's paid off before with an Ivy underdog plus the points.
I like it. A nice little pack there. The short list for Billy C. Now,
Yeah, I love that.
JB, what are you thinking? A little head-to-head matchup. I will say the Deus, as Billy was riding with UVA, I was bucking him with Maryland. We're 1-0 going head-to-head with Billy C. So are we gonna make it 2-0? JB, what are you thinking about this matchup? I mean, he makes a good case. You kind of said in your analysis too, Justin, it's a coin flip game. So, him making the case for the other side of the coin, so to speak.
Nah, that's great for our discussion. It's good to have different opinions and different plays to kind of see where everyone's thinking and everyone's approach. Going that route, you're able to kind of see and learn also as a bettor. So it's always good to learn from your peers and from fellow bettors. That's how you get better, and it makes things more enjoyable, especially when you guys are either competing or getting wins together. So it's great for both the game and great for sports gambling as a community as well. But no, I definitely agree. This game, I feel like it's going to be a 1-point game, so it can go either way. You could feel comfortable on either team, and you never know. You might be able to even get a middle there. I wish there were more live betting opportunities. I think they'll start to come here as things develop. I know we've had a couple games here on DraftKings have live betting, but I think there'll be more spots, more opportunities, Steve, and build more bets and kind of diversify your betting once we get live opportunities, because this would be a great game, either both the side or the total, to get live betting opportunities. So hopefully we might get one this weekend with this game, so we'll see.
Yeah, it's a great point. I definitely wish there was more live betting, and also and this will come once there's more volume in the market, but more line movement to create those kind of middle opportunities. But yeah, I mean, I could see Penn winning. I don't hate the minus 125 money line. Penn winning, don't hate the minus 125 money line, but I would feel safer, with Yale hoping they lose by 1 or win by whatever. So.
The Poison Ivy League this year because I want to stay away.
Poison Ivy League, that's great.
That's a great way to put it there, Hutton. The Poison Ivy League. Hey, well, we'll see. Is Billy going to score on the runaway, or is the goalie JB going to stuff him and get the money line there, or do both the plays win? Who knows? That could be the best of all worlds. Is you get the plus 1.5, you get the middle there, and everybody comes home happy. Billy, man, appreciate it. I look forward to the 100-some character tweets as you masterfully get in there. So Billy, always looking forward to it. Always looking forward to you hopping in too. Can't wait to see what makes your official plays for this weekend, and people can check it out on your Twitter timeline. Thanks, Billy.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Hopefully, me and Justin both can cash those bets, and we can all cash those UNC and Ohio State bets as well. Thanks, guys.
No problem, man. Let's all do our best Hutton Jackson impression from last week and just be cashing like crazy. That's the hope. Fingers crossed that we're all cashing. So I said that Billy was going to shut it down. We got a late addition. We got Habib checking in. Maybe he has a question for the team, maybe some plays he has as well. And then we're going to close things down here on another successful live edition here of Bet On Lacrosse, the most ever requested show yet in Bet On Lacrosse live history, with our third speaker hopping in here. Love that we're growing. Love everybody who's been checking in. That's what it is all about. We're all growing the game, and we get to talk a little sports betting while we're doing it. Habib, welcome to the show, brother. What's up?
Yo, what's going on, everybody? Been consuming the Bet On Lacrosse stuff for a couple of months now, mainly through IG and YouTube. But I'm excited to be here on the live. Not so much of a betting question, but I think a lot of people noticed earlier, maybe a couple weeks ago, a month or two ago back, the commissioner of the NLL stepped down and resigned. And then also, her name is escaping me at the moment, but whoever the vice commissioner was and would have been the interim. And I was just really wondering, I wanted to hear your guys' takes. I thought it was a strange timing, and I believe that both leagues, indoor and outdoor, are on an upward trajectory. So I just thought it was an interesting, hopefully just a detour for the NLL. And then also BetMGM, what is going on? Let's get in New York so I can start betting on these Bandits games.
I think, Hutton, this is something that we've been barking at for a while. It's like, if you're offering sports betting, push it through and get the lacrosse, get the stamp on it. I know that Justin's pretty up on this stuff too, as a writer for FOS, kind of being up on these regulations for these different states. So I'm with Habib, man. Can we get some betting in New York for these lacrosse teams, Hutton?
For real, we got 4 New York-based teams. I think that's the most in one state in the NLL. You got Rochester, Buffalo, Long Island, and Albany. Got to get New York betting. Yeah, we don't have a timeline, unfortunately, for you, but that's probably been the biggest question everyone's been asking. I don't know why we haven't gotten it yet, but
that's okay. I'm going to keep tweeting. I'm just going to keep my tweets coming.
That's what you got to do, Habib. We literally fixed the PLL market. There were inefficiencies where they were listing totals and they weren't accounting for 2-point goals. Just pestered them and added them.
Let's go. Just apply the pressure.
We're changing the world, Habib. The Bet On Lacrosse wave. Hop aboard. We're doing it, baby.
Actually, also, just to finish it out, given that the chaos, I still would love to hear your guys' takes about the whole commissioner situation. But considering how hot the Bandits are right now, and that half the team is basically playing for chaos, so we basically have an outdoor Bandits team as well. Is Buffalo basically the best lacrosse team in the world right now? Go Bills, go Bandits. I'm out.
Oh, man, the mic drop on the way out, Hutton. So I'll let you address some of that stuff. Most notably, probably the commissioner. That's a story that you'd been following, that you'd been posting on as well. So I think, you're pretty adept to speaking on that. I think a great question by Habib, and thanks for joining the space, man.
Yeah, I don't think it's a cause for concern at all. So from when I've talked to some people, his contract was up. Anyway, the fiscal budget, I think, was due. So a lot of it was budgeting. That's why the timing. Obviously, the timing mid-season seems weird, but he wasn't going to be renewed. And obviously, he took a job with Arizona Coyotes, so he had other opportunities show up. And so it was a little alarming, the timing. But I don't think it was really a sign that the league's in bad shape. Obviously, the league's adding Las Vegas next year as their 15th team. I think Team 16 is still on its way. And then you had Jessica Berman also leave for NWSL as the commissioner of that league. So that kind of seemed like, okay, what's going on here? But I don't think it's a cause for concern. People that I've talked to closer to the league than I am, because I'm not super close, but they don't think it's a cause for concern. I think the biggest thing is just seeing who ends up being the commissioner. I think we can expect an announcement hopefully in a month. I don't know. I'm not really up on who they're looking at, but I think we can expect probably an announcement in a month who will be the new commissioner. And their biggest task is going to be renegotiating the collective bargaining agreement this summer, since the Players Association decided not to renew. So that is the one kind of gray cloud hanging over the NLL's head. But in terms of the departures of both them, I don't think it's a huge cause for concern. They did some great work while they were here with the NLL. Commissioner Sakevich obviously really made the league more stable and has had steady expansion, which the league hasn't really seen. We've seen a lot of teams, fold in a lot of previous tenures, and that never happened during his watch. So, I don't think it's any cause for concern. And hopefully who they do bring in is ready to just get their hands dirty and get to work with the CBA, because that's really the only big thing that's looming this coming summer.
He's Hutton Jackson with Action Network. Also joining our dais today was Brian Andrews, Pro Lacrosse Talk, and of course, Justin Byers with Front Office Sports, a business writer there. Check him out. Check all those guys out. Drop them a follow. We're pretty good getting back with you guys as well. We love the back and forth. We had a couple other folks requesting in to be a speaker. We don't have time to squeeze you in here. Already over an hour 15 that we've been going live. Our longest ever edition, our most requested ever edition. You know what that means. We're going to be back next week, bigger and better than ever. And if you didn't get in, drop us a DM. You will get pushed to the top of the list for next week. Just didn't quite have enough time to squeeze everybody in here today. But that's our thoughts and our listeners' thoughts on the NLL and NCAA slate. Make sure you drop us a follow at Bet On Lacrosse, at Pro Lacrosse Bets. Let us know who you're betting on this week. As always, best of luck. Appreciate everybody who's ridden with us, whether you were just popping by, whether you were requesting to speak. We hope to hear from even more of you in the coming weeks as we continue betting on lacrosse. Best of luck. Cash those tickets, and we'll talk to you next Wednesday with hopefully a little bit more cash in our pockets. For the guys, I'm Dan Alexander. Have a great betting weekend.